Welcome, Shellye, to our Leaders Who Care series. Shellye with a Y-E at the end, I may add.
That's right. Well, thanks very much, Mark. I've been looking forward to our conversation.
So have I, actually. And I got to ask this before the introduction. So how did the Shellye get spelled Shellye?
So my mother had an unusual name, Mera, just Mira. And she enjoyed that when people said Mira, there was only one person they thought of. So she wanted us to each have something unique about our names. So Shellye with a Y-E.
Good for her. I love names that are unique, and I love people pronouncing names the way they should be in their, even in their country or whatever, because that's diversity, that's flavor, that's interesting, that's culture. So I like your mom already. Nice. So with that, starting with you, could you briefly introduce yourself? Not so much the business side yet, but who you are, where you're from, a little bit about family, maybe something you've never told anybody else and you want to reveal now, stuff like that.
Sure. So I am the oldest of four children. My parents were crazy. They had four kids in less than 5 years.
Oh, nice. Well, get it all done. You get it all done, though.
Yeah, they get it all done, but oh my goodness. So we grew up very close, but very competitive. Moved around a lot, nomads. My father didn't have a college degree, and so every time he had an opportunity to improve his positioning, he did. And so I lived in 7 states before I was in high school.
Wow.
I was always that new kid, on the block, new kid in school, and all those kinds of things. Not always fun for sure. Lots of challenging experiences coming from that. And I managed to continue that throughout my life. So I've actually worked and lived in 18 or 19 different places.
Oh, that's pros and cons, I would say, to that. And kids it could be hard with kids at that age to break in, I guess.
It can be. At the same time, it also builds some resilience.
Yeah.
It helps them realize the world is actually pretty small. I have 2 kids of my own, moved them around too, and they're both doing just fine. So I didn't destroy them in the process.
No, resilience is good. And this is a whole other topic, but there's a lot of conversation around are kids able to handle obstacles, confrontations, and things like that as well as before. And if you don't get the experience of how to do it and the confidence to do it, it's harder. So good for you to do that. So what were you like as a kid and a teenager? Were you a gadget person? Were you be the first to try things? Or were you, playing with dolls, music, sports? What were you doing?
So I was the kid who frankly always felt like the outsider, and therefore I just wanted people to like me and to respect me, because I found that was challenging. You have to understand, I grew up, it was the 60s and 70s. And so a lot of people were pro civil rights, but you had just as many people that were not. Right. And as the little black girl knew in the school every time, people let me know one way or the other how they felt about it. So I ended up becoming the kid who was involved in all of the clubs, all of the organizations. I would step forward to organize, to coordinate, and that turned into leadership. So I'd end up being the person running it, because I found when I did that, people actually respected me. Mm-hmm. They actually wanted me to be a part of what they were doing. So I honed early the whole organization, planning, leadership, etc. So if something was going on, I typically had my hands in it.
What a way to go, way to get in there and take control of everything. Was there a favorite that you were involved in at all?
Interesting. I don't have a favorite, but I would say the most consistent one was the one that was the least cool. So my mother got us involved in scouting, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, because no matter where we moved, there was always scouting. So it was meant to be the consistent between that and church, right? That was consistent. So I was a Girl Scout all the way through. I even became a first class scout, which is equivalent of an Eagle Scout for girls. So that was something that I was in, but trust me, in high school, I never told anybody I was in scouting.
Yeah, that's a weird thing. It was almost like I hate to say nerdy, but almost like a nerdy thing, and yet the skill sets are incredible.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Go figure that one out. Basically, we actually have done some work and some searches for working with Girl Scouts too, and so obviously incredible organization. And you're right, I don't know where that all started. Maybe it's because you wore uniforms, so people thought it was dorky or whatever to wear the uniform, but they were missing out because everybody learned a lot from doing it. So That's a good favorite. Tell us a little bit about your journey. You were educated, at Wharton. You were at some small company called IBM for 15 years. What intrigued you first, about IBM to pursue a career which really took you majorly global?
Yes. Well, I have to back up a little bit if you don't mind, Mark. I had this fateful conversation with a high school guidance counselor when I was a junior. You know, that normal conversation you have, are you going to college? What do you want to do with college? And yes, college, I have no idea what I want to do. I just want to be able to keep my thermostat at 72 degrees, travel and eat out in restaurants, because those are things I couldn't do. And she said, what do you like to do? And I said, clubs, right? I just told you I'm involved in all these things. I like leading them. And to her credit, she said, well, Shellye, clubs are like business. You pull people together and you get things done. And I said, oh, then I'm going to go into business. And I like leading clubs. So I said, all right, I'll go lead a business. And when I looked up, those people were called CEOs. So I actually decided at like 16 that I was going to go be a CEO.
Why not?
I was that audacious and that completely naive. I had no idea what that actually meant. But now I had a goal. I was a very goal-oriented person. So okay, so I went to Wharton because I figured I needed the best degree possible behind me, and that was the top business school. And I went to IBM because I had heard along the way that if you join industries that are growing, companies and industries that are growing never have enough resources. And so if you're good at what you do, you can move forward faster. So I said, okay, I'll go into tech because it was growing back in the 80s and IBM's the leader. So I'll go be CEO of IBM. So that was my strategy.
I think it's the best strategy ever. Not knowing sometimes is great, because I know you know this, because you don't have any doubts or fear or obstacles in front of you. You just do it. It reminds me a little bit of this Spanx lady. I can't remember her name right now, that just went to the top of Nordstrom's, and you weren't supposed to do that to sell Spanx, and it worked. So why not? Actually like that idea. I was gonna show you a little bit. It's a little bit like me. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wasn't good in science. Was doing this and that. So I said, well, I guess so. My mom said, well, we should go into accounting and be like an accountant, type of thing. Jewish mom. It's kind of like black mom. Yeah, we can put it on mom, and and I did, and unfortunately I was really good at it, but I didn't really like it. But it was a good base to get into other stuff for business. So, but that's a great story. We were founded Fifth Element on the basis that leaders and their businesses can do way better when they're doing good. And you've led Metric Stream as CEO. And then you wrote and were the founder of Unapologetic, which I love that, and I love the name of it. It's awesome. And other leadership roles. Can you describe these different roles and how in those roles you managed to balance solid economic results and making an impact at the same time?
Certainly. So, first of all, as CEO, one of the advantages you have of being a leader is you get to set both the tone as well as the priorities and those kinds of decisions. So, for instance, one of the things that we did was to the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. They had an entity that was called, I think, Founders Fund, but it was a nonprofit entity. And the whole idea was we donated the equivalent of one engineer's stock, right, to that. But the other thing that we did is they had periodic, quarterly things that you could do with the community, et cetera. So we absolutely supported that. As we built out globally, our international operations that were in Bangalore, India, every year they'd adopt an NGO and people would go and volunteer and do, et cetera. So it's just building in the fact that, yes, we are part of the community and the fabric. And that's also part of business, and it's good business. So I think leaving that type of approach and sharing it is something that's important. But the other thing you get to do is you, as a platform, as a CEO, you have a platform, and you can use that platform in terms of using your voice and your priorities, as well as where you spend your time. So getting involved and being on, boards of nonprofits is important. Being able to use your voice to actually shed the light on where there are issues or problems, right? Whether it's fundraising, helping and supporting. So all those things I've always done and always been involved in. Today, I continue that. I'm on the board of Catalyst, which really focuses on women leadership and women, our participation in the workforce, as well as Braven, which focuses on helping people from challenged backgrounds, not just graduate from college, but actually get degrees that are commensurate with actually get jobs that are commensurate with their degrees. So I've always absolutely felt the compelling desire to make sure that I am helping, supporting, and giving back.
And so you're unapologetic of everything you did, right?
Well, what I mean by it's funny. What I mean by unapologetic is it means you can strive to impact, to create, or to achieve whatever it is that you want. And you don't have to apologize for it. It's okay to go after your goals. It's okay to make an impact, right? It's okay to do those things. And that's what that's all about. So today I try to use my platform via social media, LinkedIn, whatever, just to share, hey, you can do this, to be inspiring. But I also use it. I've done, mentoring cohorts. I've done some events, right? I've written a book, and I've donated my book, which is Unapologetically Ambitious, Take Risks, Break Barriers, and Create Success on Your Own Terms. I've, at this point, donated almost 7,000 books to college students from challenged backgrounds or from universities that have very high percentages of Pell Grant students. So I'm continuing to try to drive and share the message because I want everyone to be able to achieve their overall aspirations.
Yeah, that's awesome. And as you were, working at some of these big companies and on board some of these big companies, did you find that the message emanated down from the CEO to everybody? Was it felt like, they said we need to do this, so they do it, or how do you get buy-in?
I think the key to getting buy-in is being clear on the why, right? It's not just telling people what to do. You need to be very clear on why. Why should you do it? Why is it worth your time? And when you do that, then you actually have people doing things because they want to, not because they're being asked to. And there's a very different dynamic there. One of the things that I also was able to do is work with one of my former business partners. He was the chairman at MetricStream, still is. But he's founded something called opengrowth.org. And I've been helping him with opengrowth.org. And the whole idea behind opengrowth.org is just creating kind of a platform where people who have things that they want to do in the community in a nonprofit way, right, can without setting up their own nonprofits. So that way you have one shared, right, infrastructure and cost, but trying to make sure that we can help in areas of empowering women, in areas of global health, right, in areas of all those things. So I honestly believe, Mark, that if everybody used their voice, their position, and their platform to advocate for just one or two causes, we could have an incredible impact on this world.
Yeah, I agree, because I kind of grew up doing stuff in community too, and it teaches you leadership, up the wazoo. A mini story. I had a young candidate a while back, and he kept telling me, I don't really have a lot of experience, and I don't have a lot of experience. I saw the last line of his resume was he ran the Santa Claus parade. And one of the reasons it caught my eye was when I lived in Winnipeg, Canada, I was the first Jewish guy to run the Santa Claus parade, believe it or not.
I gotta love that.
Yeah, it was good. But I know what goes on in community stuff, and so I asked him. I said, "Well, okay, you don't have a lot of experience, but so what about the Santa Claus parade? What did you really do there then?" And he said, "Well, had to go to the city, had to negotiate for permits and this and that and the other, had to get the sponsors, had to determine what the data was, had to do a budget, had to settle arguments between the sponsors, who was in what position in the parade." And and all that stuff. And I said, yeah, I guess you don't really have any experience. And the experience he got from that, as well as helping the community, was incredible. And then he takes it back. And we find that too. And I'd love to ask you this also. When people are engaged in doing good as well as impacting the business results, they go home. The husband, the wife, the partner, they go home. And there's two things that happen, we found. And I'd love your input on this. They go home and they say, "Oh God, I'm so tired. Get me a beer. I'm going to sit on the sofa. Work sucked, whatever today. I don't know what we're even doing." Or they come home and they say, "Hey guys, come sit down over dinner. I got to tell you what happened today with this and this and this." And we're also starting this whole project in the community to do that. So the kids hear both of those. And if we talk about sustainability, how about bringing it back down to the kids that way? So they get excited about, I could go work corporate or I could go work entrepreneurial, but I can make an impact. To your point, I can make an impact. Share a little bit of maybe some experiences you've had, or what are your thoughts about how it does flow down to the family?
Yes. First of all, I think what you're really hitting on is people who feel that what they're doing is actually serving a purpose are energized.
Right.
Right? I mean, that is just full stop. That is just always the case. And it doesn't matter whether that purpose is through work on what you get paid to do or volunteer on what you choose, right, to do, but purpose, as long as you feel like you're actually serving a purpose that you believe in, even when you're tired, you have energy, right? Even when all those things. So that to me is the biggest driver. And when I look at, even building a business, as a leader, your job is to make sure that you're actually able to tie it to a purpose that people believe in. So it's not just a job, but it becomes also a bit of a calling, right?
Yeah.
And that, I mean, building metric stream, when you're building a startup, you don't have anything to offer. I mean, you're not going to be paying very well, right? You're going to be working long hours. Your job's not going to be well defined. It's not like you're going to have great management initially because you're getting things going. I mean, you don't have a whole lot to offer if you think about it. What do you have to offer? You have a vision and a purpose and something that you are going to create that will impact whatever segment you're targeting in a way that nobody else is, right? And that's what you have. And that's what people sign up for, right? All the rest of the stuff are all reasons not to do it. So, so when you say tell any stories, building metric stream, absolutely. You're out there creating the purpose so that you can actually attract people to be able to get done what needs to get done. And then you've got to keep it going because when times are great, it's easy. When times are hard, right? Everybody's going to leave unless you figure out a way of helping them understand, yes, it's hard, but here's the purpose. Here's what we're doing, and seeing how their actions actually touch others.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And it's interesting. When you say when times go good and times go bad, you really do see who really believes in the vision, who really believes in the purpose when times are tough. Because it's easy to have a great attitude when things are going well and everybody's happy and all that. So that's when you find out the real ones. You know the One of the reasons we're actually called Fifth Element is the fifth industrial revolution is supposed to be about humanity, with the fourth being about technology and bringing it together. And how impact and talent, as you say, actually intersect with each other. The more impact you're making, really, the more chance you'll have of attracting and keeping the best people, and then those people will keep doing the impact and so on. Can you share with us a little bit about the opportunities you've earned as a board member or board director in growing a business like Metric Streams to being a board director at Verizon? In other words, if you have any specific experiences that you can share, and how you made an impact, both as a human being, but also as a Black woman in those circumstances.
Oh, well, I think there's several ways in which the impact is felt, and not necessarily talking about Verizon specifically. I've served on, at this point, I think it's on a total of 5 public boards over my time. But one of the things I get is you hear from employees that are from diverse backgrounds. Like either some will say, "Oh, it's so nice to see a woman, right, up there," or "It's nice to see a Black person," or "It's nice to." When they see that, they feel that they have opportunity. So first of all, it's hard to be what you can't see. So when people see it, they believe they can do it, and they can do it at that company. So that's one. 2, frankly, it's the questions asked. I remember in one boardroom, we were going through succession planning, and a person that I thought should have been on the CFO succession list wasn't. I thought, that's odd, right? So asking the question, what about so-and-so? And management looks at each other and like, okay, something's going on here. And so finally the head, the CHRO says, well, she's just not, it had to be a woman. She's just not polished enough. She just doesn't have they were just kind of talking about things that had nothing to do with technical capability, performance, that were all these other things. And so I said, well, has anybody told her? Nope. Nope, not a person. And then, well, how is she going to fix it or resolve it, or if she doesn't even know it's an issue? Anyway, fast forward, she is on the list of succession. Nice. All right. So how do you have an impact? Everybody can have an impact. And so much of it is just asking questions, but it's bringing a different lens. is just bringing a different lens. Because studies show that men actually are uncomfortable giving women feedback. Studies show that. Well, that's one of the reasons why they're not able to move into the top suites, is because they don't even know they have an issue, and they keep doing the same things, working hard, but not understanding what the problem is. So we've got to make sure that we're helping to just uncover these kinds of things. But those kinds of things are ways in which impacts are made.
Yeah, it's interesting. We had a diversity related video that we showed at one point where there was a leader of a meeting, and then there was a person whose background was from India. There was a woman whose background was somewhere else, and there was a new person from like Middle East or something in the meeting. And then the head of the meeting was talking mostly, and about different things. There was some interaction, but the other person had none. Fast forward after the meeting, the head of the meeting went to Joe, let's say was the guy, and said, "What's wrong with Ismail?" Let's say that's his name. He's not talking. He's not doing anything. I think he's not prepared. It's ridiculous. I don't even know why he's here. Go talk to him. So the first mistake was first mistake, he or she, whoever led, is should have talked to him, should have prepared something in advance and say what the meeting's going on. Should also not tell someone else to go talk to that person. So, but the other guy did go talk to him, and he said, "Well, I was totally prepared. I did this and this. I had all this information and whatnot. That person never asked me that, and in my country, we don't interrupt when the head of the meeting is talking, and we don't get called on to talk." So it's so reminding me of what you're saying about how do you know if you don't give somebody a shot. And I'll tell you, in our talent part of our business, women and minorities, if you will, always, especially women, always ask me the question, or they'll say, "Well, I can do the job. That's not even the issue. Are they going to allow me to be involved in the major amazing initiatives, the major projects, and am I going to be able to contribute? Am I going to be able to have obstacles that I have to overcome? Am I going to get recognized, more than just the job itself?" So I find that fascinating. I don't know if you have any input on that or comments on that.
Yeah, what they're asking is, am I going to be included?
Right.
Everything you just said, all that means is, am I going to be included?
Yeah.
Right. The analogy I love is, diversity is inviting people to the party. Inclusion is asking them to dance. And so, we've got to do better about being intentional to make sure that we're actually asking people to dance, that we are including them, just like the person in that meeting. They're not saying anything, ask their opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, find out versus just making a whole set of assumptions, because people do communicate differently.
Without a doubt. And what a great strategy for developing and keeping that person is asking them to be involved or to dance. But so brilliantly simple, basically. That's great stuff. The other thing I wanted to ask about, we've kind of touched on a little bit, we were launched about 5 years ago on International Women's Day. So we do a lot, women and diversity, et cetera. And another reason why we're called fifth for SDG 5, actually. And and every search we do is diversity leaning and all that stuff. Can you describe a little more your journey? I mean, you were one of Silicon Valley's first African-American female CEOs. What did that feel like? What was your journey like in that? And being in a position, as we talked a little bit before, to work on amazing initiatives?
Well, I'll be candid. I'm not from the Valley. So when I first moved out to Silicon Valley, I mean, I'd heard Silicon Valley, it's innovative, it's forward thinking, it's da da da. I just assumed it was diverse.
Oh, right.
So, I showed up and I'm like, OMG, this is incredible. I remember going to the very first, Kleiner Perkins was the investor in my company, lead investor, and they had their CEO summit. And the CEO summit, you invite spouses and the whole bit. So you get there and it's all mixed, right? But then they break off. CEOs go one place, the spouses go the other place to go do something. And it's me and one other CEO who is acting. Only females, the only females, right? And it was like, wow. And there were no other African Americans, nobody else Black. So I thought, oh my goodness, okay. So anyway, so what did it mean? It meant that I was going to experience things that I've experienced my entire career. People were going to underestimate me. They were going to assume that I was in the role for a reason other than my capabilities and my background. I mean, I know it. but I've also had enough experience to know how you deal with it and how to address it. So I do, what I always do in terms of moving forward. The other thing it does though, is when you are one of the only, or the only, you have a lot more responsibility that the community expects from you.
Right.
And that's something that people don't factor in. So not only am I the CEO and running the company, but the community is expecting, as the Black CEO or the female, that I'm going to speak at this, I'm going to support that, I'm going to do, because all of a sudden you've got more responsibility because you are representing everyone.
Yeah.
Right. So women, people of color who end up in these roles, others don't realize they have a whole nother job, that's 20 to 25% of their time that's just representing. And it's important. It's important to be visible. It's important but it takes time and energy, and don't get credit for that. So the work that's expected is actually significantly higher, right, for people. And this is true whether you're a CEO of a startup company or you're a senior executive in a regular business. Women and people of color carry more responsibility, just full stop. And that's never really acknowledged or understood. So that definitely have. But the other thing that ends up happening is there are some positives to it too. People remember you.
Yeah.
They remember you, which means you better be good at what you do because they're going to remember you.
I know it's not the same, but I've been involved in sports for so many years, and the pro players, a lot of them understand they're getting paid to be a role model. They just are, whether they like it or not. But it doesn't mean it's easy to be a role model, as you say, and but you kind of have to, and you get noticed. But they're getting paid a lot of money, and it's a lot different than just being a Black female in a CEO thing. But you are a role model, and there's, I would think, very fulfilling opportunity there, but also, as you said, a lot of hard work.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
To do all that. I wanted to ask you one more question before the last one, and that relates to what wisdom would you share? You've done it some already. What wisdom would you share with young Black women coming up the ladder, and maybe being one of a few? It's a little bit better now, but being one of a few, how to best navigate themselves in the business world, in the tech world, and in some of the industries that there still is significantly low number of female leaders.
All right, there is so much to share, so I'll be unapologetic and reference the book, right? Unapologetically Ambitious. That's what it's all about. So tons of stuff, but just to highlight, the number one thing is be intentional. Be intentional about your decisions. What are you trying to do? What has to be true for you to do it? And then how do you make it true for you? Right? So setting goals, doing the research, and building the plan, and then it's executing the plan. That is the number one thing. And then the number two thing is get help, take help, ask for help. There is no one on the planet that has achieved anything of significance all by themselves. No one. So don't think you're going to be the first. All right? Asking for help is a strength. It's not a weakness. And that's been definitely one of the keys to my success.
It's interesting you say that. I just interviewed a senior executive in raising funds for women founders and entrepreneurs, and said the one thing my mother told me all the time was ask for help. Nothing wrong with that. Sometimes all of us feel like that's a weakness at some point, but it's actually a strength. And the top executives, the top leaders, thankfully, have realized they can become more vulnerable. They can actually, wear a Boy Scout or Girl Scout outfit and not be nerds. They can actually pretend. And one executive told me this is the best time I've ever had as a CEO, where I don't have to look like I know everything.
Right.
It was a brilliant statement. So last thing on this part, because in LA we say leave them wanting more so we can do a sequel. So yeah, why not? One client told me in the year 2021, he said, Mark, the year 2020 was the year that flew by slowly. And I thought it was like a great statement that makes you think at least a little bit. But the last 3 years have been off the wall or off the charts, whatever you want to call it. And with all that we've experienced, what are you most grateful for, and what are you most hopeful for also?
Mm. I'm most grateful for my health and my family.
Mhm.
And I'm most hopeful that the pandemic has resulted in people realizing we're all human
Yeah.
and we all put on our socks the same way, all have dogs running through our houses, all have this. I mean, I think it's made everybody more real, and in making everyone more real, and in some ways, level playing field,
Mhm.
I do believe it's enabled organizations, and which is just in how people treat other people, but it's enabled us to be more empathetic, and more humane on some of the things that we're doing. So what I'm hopeful for is that we're going to continue to remember all of this as we build out organizations, as we work with people, as we support each other.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Well, I'm certainly grateful that you are a leader who cares. So way to go on that for sure. And I am hopeful for for that too. And that's part of what Leaders Who Care is supposed to be about. Is if you care, it really can make a difference for people, and because we all want the same thing, right? At the end of the day. So thank you for sharing all that, and for being on our series, and being who you are. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Mark. Thanks so much for having me.